Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Mastering Invoices in PaintScout webinar. For those of you who don't know, my name is Sam, and I'm the Client Success Coach here at PaintScout. Today, we're going to walk through how you can create and manage invoices in PaintScout, best practices for getting paid on time, and then how you can just use PaintScout invoicing features to streamline your workflow. So before we dive into the features, let's just talk about why invoicing is important. So a streamlined invoicing process helps make sure that you guys get paid on time. It's going to reduce admin work, and it also keeps your business financially healthy, which is really important. So today we're going to cover some invoicing tools in PaintScout that help you track outstanding invoices, send automated payment requests, and then ultimately get you paid faster. Perfect. So to get started, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Beautiful. So I'm hoping everybody can see the PaintScout screen here. To dive in, I think the first thing we're going to talk about today is how to create invoices in PaintScout. And there's about 3 ways you can do that in here. So the first one we're going to touch on is creating invoices automatically. So if you're going to be invoicing in PaintScout, I highly recommend that you enable automatic invoice generation. And to do that, you're going to go to your account settings from the top right corner. You're going to go to the invoices section, and you're just going to want to make sure that this automatic invoice generation is enabled. And so what that's going to do is whenever an estimate is accepted in PaintScout, an invoice is going to be created automatically. So as an example, if I head over to the estimates tab here and we take a peek at this estimate that has been accepted, you're going to notice that we have the blue banner that says view invoice. So this was created automatically. You can view the invoice by clicking on this button here. You can also view the invoice by hitting the drop-down menu next to send and that view invoice button. And then as well as you can find it from the invoices tab, because this is where all of your invoices live. Now, the second way to create invoices in PaintScout would be to create one manually from an estimate. So if you don't have automatic invoice generation enabled, or if you need to create an invoice before the estimate is accepted, what you're going to want to do is open up your estimate. You're going to hit that drop-down menu next to send, and you should see the create invoice button. And so once you click on that, it's going to go ahead and open and create a new invoice for you. And the third way to create an invoice in PaintScout would be to create one completely manually. So if you're ever in a situation where you don't have an estimate for your customer, but you do need to create an invoice for them, you're going to want to create an invoice from scratch. So you can do that from your invoices tab. You'll see the new invoice button in the top right corner. And then once you click on it, you can go through and build out an invoice just like you would an estimate. So you're going to choose your invoice type. And that's going to open this invoice for you where you're going to want to add your contact info, your job address info, and then build out your invoice using areas and line items, just like you would on an estimate. But keep in mind, it is an invoice, which means you can request and report payments. Perfect. So now that we've gone through how you can build an invoice in PaintScout, let's go ahead and take a look at one that's already been built out. Perfect. So this invoice here is pre-created. As you're going to see, it looks a lot like an estimate, but the main difference is it's an invoice because we have the amount paid section, we have the balance due section, and we also have this payment request screen down here. So first thing I want to talk about on this invoice is sending the invoice. So if you're somebody who just collects your entire payment at once, you can always just go ahead and click that send button in the top right corner of your invoice. And it's going to open up an email preview screen, as I'm sure you're used to, because it looks just like the one on the estimate side of things. So obviously you can send your invoice just like this. This is a preview of your invoice on the right-hand side here, just to take a peek before you hit that send invoice button, and then you're good to go. Alternatively, if you're somebody who takes deposits or progress payments or basically anything where you're not requesting the whole balance due at once, you're going to want to use the request payment feature. So you're going to notice in this payment screen down here, we have this add/request payment button. If we go ahead and click on it, we can hit that request payment button again, and it's going to open up the configure payment screen. So you can either request the full amount, or like I mentioned, if you're somebody who requests a deposit or a progress payment, you can click down here on the custom button. So from here, now I can edit my amount. So if you're somebody who takes a deposit, that's a flat fee. So maybe let's say you take like a flat $500 on every job, you can just enter that into the amount box. Alternatively, if you're somebody who takes a percentage-based deposit, you can just click on that money here, that money toggle, hit the percentage button, And now we can enter the percentage amount. So if you take, let's say, a 30% deposit, you just throw that into the box and it's going to auto calculate the amount for you. So now you can see we are requesting $575 of our $1,900. You can also add a note to your customer. So if you want to throw in that this is a deposit or you want to give them any other info, you're more than welcome to throw it in here. And then you can hit the next button and you're going to see it opens up the email preview screen again. Now it's going to be the same thing, but if you do look on the right-hand side, you are going to notice this payment request banner that populates right at the top of your invoice for your customer. So as soon as they open the invoice, they're going to see that payment request and know how much they owe you. So if we hit that send payment request button, it's going to go ahead and email them that payment request with a link to the invoice so they can go ahead and pay that for you. You'll also notice that this payment request has now been marked as pending. So when your customer does pay you, what you're going to do is click anywhere on your invoice to edit it. We hit that edit invoice button. And then on the three dots next to that pending payment request, you're going to see it says mark as paid. So if you click on that mark as paid button, it opens up the screen to prompt you to record your payment. So from here, it's really simple. We're just entering our method. So whether it's check, cash, e-transfer, the amount, which automatically autofills with the amount that you had requested, but you can change it if you need to. The payment date, and of course a note. So this is a really great place to enter your check numbers if you're receiving checks or just any other additional information you want your customer to know or you want to keep for record keeping purposes. Once I hit confirm, that payment request is going to be marked as paid. You're also going to see that the balance due has changed. And then now my invoice is in the partial status, which means that I have collected a payment. However, it's not fully marked as paid yet. So you're going to go through and continue that process for your final payment or your progress payment, whatever payment you're collecting next. But just keep in mind that you might get into a situation where your customer is a superstar and, it's the end of the job and they just come out with a check for, your $1,343 because they've already looked at the invoice and they know how much they owe you. So if that's the case, you can skip the request payment step and just go right into the record payment step. So to do that, we're just hitting that add/request payment button again, and we're going to go ahead and click on the record payment. Same thing as we saw before, so we're entering our method, the amount, the payment date, and then any notes that you want to include. So once we hit confirm, that just populates here for us. And now our invoice is marked as paid. Another thing to note about invoices in PaintScout is that when you record a payment on an invoice, your customer will receive an email notification saying thank you for your payment, and it includes a link to the invoice. And of course, if they open up the invoice, they can click on this PDF receipt button to download a receipt. So they will be notified as soon as a payment is recorded. Perfect. So now that we've gone through and we've talked about, how to build invoices, how to request and record payments, I do want to take a moment to talk about a couple of integrations. So the first integration I want to talk about is our Stripe integration. So if you don't know, Stripe allows you to take credit card payments within PaintScout. So if you're somebody who uses Stripe or you're somebody who wants to use Stripe, just keep in mind your workflow is going to be very similar to the one that I just showed you, but there are a couple things to keep in mind. The first is that any credit card payments made through Stripe are going to be recorded automatically on the PaintScout invoice for you. So using the credit card integration really streamlines your process and it automates extra steps for you. The second thing to keep in mind is that when you're enabling the Stripe integration, you do have the ability to set a deposit amount. So again, if you take 30%, you can throw that in there. If you take $500, you can throw that in there. And then anytime an estimate is accepted, your customer will be immediately prompted to pay their deposit. So they'll be met with a pay now button. If they go through and they pay that deposit, it's going to be auto recorded on the invoice for you, like I just said. And of course, they're going to get that email that says, thank you for your payment with a copy of the invoice and the receipt. So it definitely automates the whole beginning process of your invoicing. And all you're really going to have to do with invoices is make sure to request your final payment. Perfect. The second integration I want to take a moment to talk about here is the QuickBooks Online integration. So typically we see QuickBooks Online used one of two ways. So the first is you're not invoicing in PaintScout at all, and you're doing all of your invoicing out of QuickBooks Online. And if that's your workflow, that's absolutely great. Please just keep in mind that your workflow in PaintScout ends after the estimate has been accepted because you're doing all of your invoicing through QuickBooks Online. And therefore, you're going to lose a little bit of functionality in PaintScout because you won't be able to well, you can invoice, but you're not going to be invoicing in PaintScout. You're not going to use the report section for invoicing in PaintScout. You're not going to send automated follow-ups for invoices in PaintScout. So just keep in mind your workflow ends in PaintScout after the estimate is accepted if you are invoicing in QuickBooks Online. The second workflow that we see with QuickBooks Online is you're invoicing completely out of PaintScout and you're just using QuickBooks Online for record keeping or bookkeeping purposes. If that is the case, I want to take a moment to just talk about best practices for setting up that integration. So when you're setting up this QuickBooks integration, you're really going to want to make sure that you're setting it to send the invoice to QuickBooks after the invoice in PaintScout has been changed to paid status. And that's because this is the easiest workflow, it's the best workflow, it's the recommended workflow. So essentially what it looks like is you're estimating in PaintScout, your estimate gets accepted, an invoice is created, whether it's automatically or manually, you're recording your payments on your invoice, and then the second that status automatically changes to paid because the balance due is 0, a copy of that invoice is sent over to QuickBooks Online and it's there for your records. So I just wanted to point that out and just chat about the recommended workflow. Great. So now let's get into managing invoices and tracking payments in PaintScout. So first things first, in your Invoices tab, you can always use these quick filters up here to view certain statuses. So for example, if you want to see all of your invoices in the sent status or in the viewed status or in the partial status, you just have to click on it. It's going to populate for you. Alternatively, you can also use our new reports feature and then check out this outstanding invoices report. So this is essentially a consolidated version of what we were just looking at under the Invoices tab, but it's just going to show you we have your partial sent and viewed invoices. So really helpful for staying on top of any invoices that aren't marked as paid yet. There's also a couple other reports that you can check out. So there's this payments collected report. And now we did do a webinar on reports last month, and it is up on YouTube if you want to take a look at that. But just as a recap, obviously the payment method section here is great because you can keep an eye on your highest payment methods, your lowest payment methods, kind of determine if you can offer any payment method discounts, but obviously just great to really stay on top of all of your payments in here. And then the last report I want to point out is the payment request report. So in here, you can stay on top of all of your payment requests. This one's going to be so great because obviously if you have any pending payment requests, it's going to stick out and you'll be able to see and then just make sure or double check as to why that's still pending and it hasn't been paid yet. Amazing. So now let's kind of talk about some best practices for faster payments. So the first thing is going to be setting very clear payment terms. So if we go to my example estimate here, you're going to notice on my estimate, I do have this line item about my deposit information. So I'm letting my customer know right off the bat, I require a 30% deposit upon approval. I can't schedule them in until I receive that deposit. So essentially the expectation is set even before they book the job with you. So really recommend staying on top of that. That's going to make sure that you get payments faster. You can also save a line item like this to your account settings and then add it to a template. Adding it to a template means that it's going to appear on your estimate every single time. You don't have to do anything to manually add it, so you don't have to worry about forgetting. And you just know it's going to be on every single estimate for every single one of your customers. The second best practice for making sure you get paid on time is going to be to use the invoice follow-up feature. So obviously PaintScout has an auto follow-up feature. I'm not sure if all of you know though that you can add follow-ups for invoices as well. So in your account settings under communications, if we go to this auto follow-up section here, you're going to see I've got some pre-built in my account. But if we scroll down, you're going to notice I have this invoice follow-up. Now, creating a follow-up is really simple. You're just going to follow the steps that pop up on your screen. So the first step is selecting your document type so you can choose between an estimate or an invoice. The second step is going to be to set up your follow-up requirements. So this one is set to send a follow-up if the invoice is overdue after 1 day. but you can choose multiple different statuses from the drop down here. So if you want to send one for sent status, viewed status, partial status, they're all in here. And you can also customize the amount of time you would like it to send after using this drop down as well. The last step here is just building out your message. So you can come in here, write whatever you want. These things are called tags. So essentially they just pull information directly from the estimate or from the invoice for you. So it helps to obviously customize your email or your text, but you don't have to go in and manually customize that email or text every time. So if you want to add a tag yourself, you're going to notice that tag button that you just find at the top bar here. And when you click on it, you can choose from a list of pre-built tags. Don't forget that you can also create follow-ups for text. And then once you hit confirm and it's enabled, it will send out for follow-ups that meet for invoices that meet the parameters moving forward. Awesome. The next best practice that I want to talk about is just offering multiple payment methods, because it makes it way easier for your clients to pay when they can choose between multiple methods. So obviously we know that check, cash, e-transfer, that's all great because it saves your customer that credit card fee. But do keep in mind that allowing credit card payments is great because it's really easy for your customers who maybe don't have a checkbook or they don't feel comfortable e-transferring. And then on top of it, you're going to find some customers who really want to get those credit card points, so they like paying by credit card. The third thing I want to mention is for any of our users in the States, we do have the YStack integration, which is what's going to allow you to add financing to your invoices. And adding financing to your estimates and your invoices just makes your services more accessible for everybody, and it can lead to you winning more and larger jobs. So just keep that in mind as well. And the last best practice I want to share for making sure that you're getting paid on time is going to be utilizing the invoices activity feed. So just like you see on an estimate, your invoice also has an activity feed from the sidebar menu and then that activity tab. So this is really going to help you keep track of everything. You're going to be able to see when your customer has viewed the invoice, how long they viewed it for, how many times they viewed it. And of course, that's just going to help you stay on top of your payments, make sure you get paid on time and everything goes smoothly. Amazing. So that is everything I have for you today. I'm going to open the floor to questions now, so feel free to drop those in the chat. How do we edit line items permanently? So to edit something permanently, you're going to want to do that from your account settings. So a good way to look at it, it's a great rule of thumb with PaintScout. It's not just for line items, it's for pretty much everything. So your production rates, your templates, everything like that. If you make a change in your account settings, it will apply to estimates moving forward. Whereas if you make a change to something on a particular estimate, it only applies to that particular estimate. How can we remove interior preparation in the invoice? We want to keep it in the proposal. Great question. So invoices act just like estimates. So you can add or remove things as you see fit. So for example, if I am on this invoice here, first thing, you're going to hit the estimate to edit it. And then you're just going to click the three dots on the right-hand side, and there's going to be that archive button. So essentially, archive in PaintScout is a soft delete. So we've archived it, and now it lives under this archive tab up here. It's not visible to your customer. It's not visible to the work order, but it just lives in this section because if you didn't mean to delete it, you can quickly re-add it using the three dots and then choosing Move to Estimate. Are you planning on offering financing for Canadian users as well? I don't believe there's anything on the roadmap at the moment, but if something does get added, I will be sure to reach out and let you know. When will ACH payment method be available in the States? It's very exciting. It is on the roadmap. I don't have an exact date I can give you, but definitely keep an eye out for it because it's coming soon. Can you export estimates as a Word doc? No, not at the moment. So you can export estimates as a PDF always. So for estimates, invoices, no matter what you're working on, if we head to an estimate and we go to that drop-down menu next to send, you're going to see we have that download estimate button. So that's going to download as a PDF for you. So it's similar, but it's not going to be a Word doc where you can edit it. You had a customer who didn't want to use an email. What would be the easiest way to share an estimate through text? Great question. If that's the case, like they don't want it sent to their email and they only want it sent through text, I would recommend copying the estimate link. So to do that, you hit that send drop-down menu, and you're gonna see where it says copy estimate link. Once you click on this, you're gonna have a couple options. So there's the tracking link and the preview link. So for those of you who don't know, the tracking link is what you send to a customer because it's going to trigger tracking. So if they open that link, you're gonna see that it's been viewed. On the other hand, there's this preview link here, and that's what you would use if you were sending internally because it doesn't trigger tracking. So you can just hit that copy button, and then I would just go ahead and text it to them through your own phone number. Of course, if you hit the send button, you are able to send an estimate via text, but it can only be sent through email and text. You can't set send to text only using this screen here. So if you're only sending to text, just make sure to do it through that copy link button. Or you could, of course, just replace this email with your own email, but then have their phone number here. No, so our integration currently does not work with QuickBooks Desktop, only QuickBooks Online. Yeah, absolutely, Mandy. You can definitely add tags to invoices. So, Mandy, if you don't have tags enabled in your account, just send me a quick message after today and I will enable it for you. But tags work the same on invoices as they do estimates. So you would just click your status in the top left corner, and then you're going to have that tag section so you can go through and add a tag if you want. Again, if it's not already enabled in your account, just let me know after the call today. Send me an email and I'll get it enabled for you. Yeah, what would be the best habits with PaintScout and using QuickBooks? Great question. So kind of like I talked about earlier, there's two ways to use that integration, right? So you're either fully invoicing out of QuickBooks or you're fully invoicing out of PaintScout. You really shouldn't ever be invoicing out of both. So if you're fully invoicing out of QuickBooks, again, great workflow, but just keep in mind that you're losing a lot of functionality in PaintScout because you're no longer using the invoices section of anything. So you're not building invoices, you're not going to use the reporting feature in invoices, you're not going to use the auto follow-up feature for invoices. So it just comes down to your preference. So if you want to invoice in QuickBooks, that's great. If you want to invoice in PaintScout, but you still want to be able to have a copy of your invoice in QuickBooks Online, you can definitely do that. You're just going to want to make sure that the setting you enable in your QuickBooks setup is going to be to send the invoice to QuickBooks Online after the invoice is marked as paid in PaintScout. How do we choose the category for the invoice to map over to in QuickBooks Online? So I might be wrong, Stacey, I might be misunderstanding you, but I don't have it in this photo here, but essentially in the QuickBooks Online integration, there is one item type that you can choose. So our integration with QuickBooks Online is not typically used for job costing because it doesn't allow you to break down your estimate into, like individual item types. If that is something you're looking for, I would recommend trying to connect QuickBooks Online through Zapier rather than our direct integration. Like I mentioned, our direct integration is really simple. It's either for sending a copy of the estimate over to QuickBooks Online so you can invoice fully out of there, or just keeping a copy of the PaintScout invoice in QuickBooks Online for reporting purposes. So the materials mapping and the labor mapping, it's not something that you can split up using our direct integration, but definitely check out connecting the two through Zapier because you're going to have a lot more customizability. It was requiring you to fill out the email section for the customer, even though he didn't provide me with an email. Is there a way to not need an email for a customer? That's a really great question. To be honest, I am not completely sure. So I will double check with my team and get back to you. As far as I know, a contact does not need an email address, but obviously you won't be able to send email to your customer if there's no email address included in the contact. So if you're kind of looking for a workaround, so you want to be able to send them through text using the send button, I would just enter your own email address under that customer name and then send to their phone number, and then you can remove your email address after. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for hopping on today. I really appreciate you being here. Please don't forget to join the PaintScout Pros Facebook group to make sure that you guys stay in the loop for upcoming webinars. And once again, thank you so much for joining today. I really appreciate it, and I will check in with you guys soon.